By now, I think you all know that I'm a big sports fan, You probably can tell me right here and now who I usually root for. But I do like sports. I like sports a lot, and I like attending sports events. And over the course of the last several years, my kids go to Linden schools. I have participated or been involved or volunteered in some way. If I'm not announcing a game or keeping score for a game, during the football season, I'm on the sideline doing the chain gang, the guys that measure out for the first down and that, and I love doing that. And one of the reasons I love it is because the chain gang is on the opponent's side, all right? So I'm there on the opponent's, side of the field, listening to them, listening to the coaches, and you get a real different perspective of the game when you're listening to the other team or you're listening to those coaches. We joke we have the same crew that kind of works the varsity football games at Linden, and we can pick out the good coaches and the ones that aren't so great. But one of the things we always talk about coming out of halftime is that depending upon where the game is at, you can always tell what's going to happen with that team. And it has a lot to do with what's their attitude. When they come out, are they spirited? Are they excited? Or do they come out just a little bit defeated? And in my team, we can always say, they're not going to win. They're not going to make it. Or, you know what? They have it, and they're going to kick Linden's butt. Okay? I mean, that's kind of what we talk about. But you do see that. But when they come out of that, time, they're driven by the spirit that is within them. They're driven by the motivation to win, just the motivation to be the best that they possibly can be. And I love that. And I've always told my kids in playing sports, no matter where you're at in the game or what's happening, you still give it your best and you still fight to the end. You work as hard as you can to be the best that you can, and you be the team player that's always going to lift your other teammates up. Now, I played sports all throughout my life, and I'll be upfront and honest with you, I really wasn't that good. I love sports, but you know what? Back when I was young, I was short and chubby. Now I'm tall and chubby, okay? But I still sat the bench. But one of the things I learned early on is that I found my place. I found my place, and that was to be that spirited player, to always cheer on my teammates. And that's what I always try to do. And, towards the end of the season, a couple different seasons in a couple different sports, I received the award for the most spirited player, and I love that. But, of course, everybody knew, well, he just sat the bench, But, I think about that in terms of today's reading, okay, especially the one that comes from the Acts of the Apostles. All right, now we have these apostles that are living in the resurrection, okay? They're living their Easter, and they know and believe because they've seen Jesus, they've seen what happened. I mean, they were defeated. At halftime of their life, they were defeated. But somewhere along the line, in those 3, 4, 5 days, that week, whatever, and maybe let's call that their halftime pep talk, life changed. Life changed dramatically. And no longer were they defeated. They came out with spirit. They came out with fight. They came out with determination. Now remember, these were ordinary people that didn't have a lot of gifts and talents to go out and convince others, to sell this to other people, but something motivated them. And something made them stand up and say, we're going to do this. And in this story in the Acts of the Apostles, I mean, you hear about how they were threatened. You hear about how they were challenged. You hear about how, those church leaders were trying to keep them down. But it didn't stop them because they believed in themselves, but most importantly, they believed in the resurrection. They believed that Jesus really was and is the Messiah. And that belief filled them with something that just carried them through the rest of their lives and, of course, passed it on to us. Now, I love this line towards the end of it, where it says, as they prayed, the place where they were gathered shook. Now we're talking about they were defeated, they were threatened, but it didn't stop them. They still continued to pray. They still continued to celebrate. They still continued to raise themselves up and to live as Easter people. And the place shook. I guess we have to ask ourselves that question too. We believe, I hope we do, because we're all sitting here right now. But does that belief lift us up to tackle those moments of defeat, to tackle those, difficult moments? The hope is that, that belief does carry us through. It does carry us through. And in this gospel, of course, John, just has a beautiful story about Nicodemus, the church leader who, for fear of coming to him through the day, he came to him at nighttime, and they had this conversation about being born again. And, that whole born again of the Spirit and born again of the water and so forth, that's for another homily, all right, in another debate. But I just want you to think about that, how being born in the Spirit, it does change our lives. To live in the Spirit. Isn't that sort of what born means? To live out there, to live in this world, but to live in the Spirit, to live that, with the Lord in our hearts and our minds. When you continue to read the stories in the Acts of the Apostles, you begin to see people that were different because of that living in the Spirit. Being born in the Spirit, being motivated by the Spirit. It changed their lives, it changed their world, and ultimately it changed ours. Because I'm going to tell you, if they came out at halftime to play the rest of that game in a defeated, attitude, just give up, I don't know if we'd be here. They were filled with that Spirit. They were filled with that belief, and it changed their world, and it changed ours. So I guess we need to ask ourselves, are we born in the right way? Are we living in that Spirit? And is it changing our lives? Because when it changes our lives, it changes others, and it changes the world around us.